Yes guys, welcome back to the Fantasy Football Fix YouTube channel. My name is FPL Nacho, and in this video we're going to be looking at those top transfers going into Game Week 7. Game Week 6 was as eventful as ever, so we have a lot to talk about. So if you are new around here, make sure you do hit that subscribe button, and if you enjoy the content, make sure you do smash the like button. So without further ado guys, let's get started. Right guys, so I feel like there's no better place to start than looking at Man United and in particular Marcus Rashford. So it was a fantastic performance from Man United with that 3-1 victory against Arsenal. Things are starting to turn for the better under Ten Hag. And looking at the underlying numbers in that game in Game Week 6, Man United posted a 1.72 expected goals against Arsenal, which is really promising viewing because sometimes we do see results like this where the underlying stats really don't do it justice. But these are some decent numbers for Man United, which makes their assets become a little bit more of a consideration in future game weeks. So looking at Marcus Rashford picking up those 2 goals, his underlying numbers for Game Week 6, 0.72 expected goals, 0.35 expected assists, and he posted 2 shots. So very effective in that game. 2 shots, 2 goals. Some would argue not sustainable, but 0.72 expected goals are decent numbers nonetheless in just one fixture. And on the screen here, you can see the numbers for him over the course of the season so far in the 6 game weeks that we've had so far this season. And you can see the fixtures as well over the next 5 game weeks. So Marcus Rashford in a little bit of a purple patch right now. 2 goals and 2 assists in his last 2 matches. And as I mentioned, Man United as a whole seem to be clicking and gelling as a team. Now it's worth noting, over the last 3 games, they've had 3 victories, but they've posted about a 4.5 expected goals, which is almost identical to what they were putting up in their first 3 league matches. It is worth noting. So they haven't necessarily become a team that is twice as good over the last 3 game weeks. They've just been able to put the ball in the net effectively and actually defensively have really tightened up, which I think naturally when a team becomes better defensively, it just puts that calming effect on a team as a whole because they know they don't need to score 3 or 4 goals to win a game. They can win scrappy. And of course, that does mean that hopefully these attacking assets do come into their role when they can actually just chill out and play for their teams in respect. So Marcus Rashford, as I mentioned, I think is a fantastic option going forward at 6.5 million. He is flagged in FPL, but we do believe that he is going to be okay for Game Week 7. But I think it's enough of a reason for us not to necessarily just jump in on him. We need to understand the press conferences. So if there is going to be another price change, I think we can just monitor that one and understand whether, first and foremost, is he available? And secondly, is he a desperate enough transfer to bring in? Now you can see the fixtures coming up over the next 5. Crystal Palace away and Leeds at home in the next 2. Then that tricky fixture at the Etihad against Man City, which naturally I can't recommend any manager bringing in a player with that sort of fixture upcoming. But the next 2 in particular I think are okay for Man United. I rate Palace defensively, in particular at Selhurst Park. But Leeds at home I think is a fantastic fixture for him to potentially be on the score sheet again in there. So fixtures over the short term, I'm not too much against. I think they are worthwhile considering. In particular, if you are sat there right now with the likes of Rodrigo with his long-term injury and you're looking for a sideways move. Because in this 6.5 category, we have the likes of Sinistera at Leeds, Ward-Prowse at Southampton. But I really do like what Rashford does offer in this Man United team, playing as that forward with the likes of Sancho and Antony either side of him. I think there's a lot of creativity with Fernandes and Eriksen sitting behind him. It's a much more effective Man United side than having the likes of Fred and McTominay just sitting there as a double pivot in this Man United team. Now, over these next 5 game weeks, Rashford is predicted to score 16.7 points. Now, it's worth noting, with our algorithm, it does change every single day. So I would recommend you checking it out over on fantasyfootballfix.com. Links are in the bio, just because it does ever change based on expected minutes and those underlying stats. Now, the big question mark I have right now with Marcus Rashford is those minutes. Now, we knew he came off a little bit early in Game Week 6 because of a slight knock. Again, make sure you monitor that in the press conferences. But my main worry is going to be Anthony Martial, the return of him, and also Cristiano Ronaldo sitting on that bench. I do think that Ten Hag views Rashford as a forward. We have Sancho on one wing, Anthony on the other. So I do think they are going to be getting the game time on the flanks. I just don't see a situation where Marcus Rashford plays 90 minutes week in, week out with the likes of Martial and Cristiano Ronaldo sitting on the bench. I just don't see that happening consistently. So my main worry is going to be the expected minutes of Rashford. I think he could become a 75-minute man where he is the starter in the team, but does get rotated in games whether they're finished off or they're just looking for that extra kind of impetus off the bench to get them going in certain fixtures. So my conclusion on Rashford is I still think that he is a fantastic option going forward and a brilliant differential in the coming game weeks. However, I would just say there's a slight question mark about his minutes with the return of Anthony Martial potentially in the future. So let me know in the comments, guys, what your thoughts are on Marcus Rashford. It's fantastic to see these Man United options actually emerge as FPL picks. And as the template is starting to diverge into different directions, I think Rashford could be a really nice punt over the next 2 game weeks if you are looking for a Man United asset. But let me know in the comments, guys, what your thoughts are. So next up, we're going to be looking at player 2 ahead of game week 7. Now, while Man United and Rashford stole the headlines on Sunday, it definitely was Brentford and Toney that stole them on Saturday. A hat-trick for Toney, which gave Brentford a 5-2 victory against Leeds, and Brentford were fantastic in this fixture. And importantly, Toney actually getting in amongst the goals. There's been a bit of an issue right now with Toney at Brentford over the course of last season and in this season where the formation changes and it means Toney either is a creator in the team or the focal point in the team. And that was very much the case in this fixture against Leeds, which was fantastic for those that did own him in game week 6, of course. So just to look at game week 6 in isolation, 3 goals for Toney, 1.35 expected goals, which is fantastic viewing, a 0.0 expected assists, again, being more of the focal point in that team rather than the kind of chance creator, and 6 shots. So the volume of chances was fantastic for Ivan Toney. And when I'm looking at his underlying stats here for the course of the season, I'm seeing really promising things. 45 FPL points is fantastic for a player at his price range, and 38.77 expected FPL points is really great reading as well. As I said, it's not too much of a discrepancy there to think, oh, he can't continue what he is doing. And the expected goals, again, we need to remember that being on penalties as well is another fantastic thing that he has going for him in this Brentford team. Because when we're looking at assets going forward, we need to remember that the European football is starting to come about. So when we are considering these premium teams like Man United, City, Arsenal, Chelsea, Liverpool, for example, their players do come with a slight caveat that European fixtures are going to influence their expected minutes. But when we consider talisman players like Toney featuring in teams that only have to focus on the Premier League like Brentford, I think they become even more valuable assets because we know that their minutes are guaranteed and we don't have to worry about a fixture in Spain midweek that they are going to have to compete with their minutes with. Toney is as guaranteed as they come, and with the penalties, it just makes him an even stronger asset. Now, with the fixtures coming up for Brentford, we can see here, Southampton, Arsenal, Bournemouth for the next 3, I would argue, are decent fixtures for Brentford. I think they can cause problems for Arsenal being such a direct team that they are. And then Newcastle and Brighton in the following game weeks. I think when we look at it over the next 5, it's actually quite a difficult run for Brentford. But when we just knock it down into the next 3, I still think there's a time frame for Toney if you have not brought him in. Now, 22.6 predicted points over the next 5 is decent viewing for Toney, but it's worth noting in game weeks 7 and game weeks 9, that's predominantly where those predicted points are predicted to do well. So my viewpoint right now on Ivan Toney is this: I still think that there is value to be had in him over the next 3 game weeks. But what we need to start considering now as we are making our transfers is, when are you planning on wildcarding if you haven't already? Game week 7, game week 8 are the 2 game weeks before the international break. So there's a common strategy right now amongst the FPL community to potentially use their wildcard before the game week 9 deadline, which gives you the international break to understand if there's any injuries or potential rotational risks in teams, and then set up for game week 9 with your wildcard team to then have game week 9 to game week 16 before the before the World Cup, where you effectively have that team locked in. Now with Ivan Toney, I think this is a bit of a tricky one right now because, yes, I think over the next 3 fixtures he is a viable option. But when I look at someone like Mitrovic, I think to myself, this is potentially the guy that I want to get in. He's played his fixture against Spurs. He now has Chelsea coming up. And over the same period, he actually has a higher predicted points over the next 5 of 23.3 predicted points. He has better fixtures, and importantly, his underlying stats are better than Toney's so far this season. And I would argue that Fulham have had the tougher of fixtures. He's posted a 4.01 expected goals and a 0.7 expected assists. So he is very much the focal point in that Fulham team and has the penalties as well. So I don't think we've missed the boat on Toney. I think there's value over the next 3. But if you are looking more longer term, maybe you haven't played your wild card yet, then I think Mitrovic is the route to go for. Otherwise, if you're looking for a 2-game week punt, I think Toney still tops Mitrovic over those next 2. But let me know in the comments, guys, what your thoughts are on the debate between Mitrovic and Toney, because I really do think that our teams are now funneling towards a 3 up front strategy, something that I am considering over the coming game weeks, and in particular in my wildcard team. So next up, guys, let's take a look at our 3rd and final player ahead of game week 7. And that man is going to be Trippier, a player that I was considering bringing in a game week 7, a game week 6, and I really wish I did. With that 0-0, it was the defenders at Newcastle, in particular Trippier and Pope, that really did deliver. So just looking at him in isolation, he obviously picked up a clean sheet, but 2 bonus points in game week 6. And I'm starting to see a little bit of a trend with Trippier here in regards to bonus points. Now, again, very much a small sample size when we are looking at players over just a 6-game week period. I don't think we can come to any concrete conclusions here. But Trippier has picked up 4 bonus points so far this season. 2 of those come in the 0-0 draw in game week 6. But what is super interesting here is he's got 1 goal so far this year, and he didn't get any bonus points for that goal that he scored against Man City. So what that delivers to me there, and it's saying, is Trippier is a bit of a bonus point magnet. When Newcastle do keep clean sheets or they are in amongst the game, Trippier's baseline for bonus points is actually fantastic. And the fact that he hasn't actually had an assist so far this season, and the one time that he did get a goal, he didn't even get a bonus point, screams to me that if Newcastle keep a clean sheet and Trippier just features, he is going to be in and amongst the bonus points. And if you throw on top of that potential assists, then that could mean that Trippier could be on for some unbelievable hauls over the course of this season. So I just wanted to raise the attention there. Trippier is definitely a bonus point magnet. And I think if you are looking for a player that could be a monster hauler now and then, I think Trippier is a bit of a sleeping giant right now, even though he hasn't necessarily had one of those yet to speak of. Now, looking at the fixtures, long-term, Newcastle are fantastic. So if you have used your wildcard so far this season, I think Newcastle is a team that you need to consider from a defensive perspective. And Trippier, I think, is one that you could bring in this game week and hold all the way up into the World Cup. Absolutely. If you are a manager that is got his wildcard in the bank and is looking for the future, I think we could potentially not consider Trippier over the next 2, even though the Bournemouth game is fantastic, and definitely have Trippier penciled in for our wildcard teams in game week 9 onwards. But that's not to say that Trippier shouldn't be a consideration for our teams from game week 7 onwards. I really think he is a priority for managers if they are sitting on there with the likes of Robertson and still haven't downgraded from him and want to free up some funds. Trippier will be right up there as one of my number 1 players to bring in. Now, looking at Newcastle as a whole, they've conceded 6 goals so far this season, which is fantastic viewing, but have posted an expected an expected goals conceded of 8.22. So that's 10th best, and they have played teams like Man City and Liverpool, is worth noting, and a very, very good Crystal Palace side. So I think Newcastle defensively are looking good. They're not looking the best in the league, is worth noting. The likes of Brighton are still better than them, but they're looking okay. And with someone like Nick Pope in goal, who always kind of outperforms his expected goals conceded, they have a good goalkeeper in there where I think they're always going to be better than their underlying stats actually suggest. Now, just to finalise on Trippier here, we've seen 1 goal, no assists, but 0.54 expected assists. What I really like about Trippier is, while his expected assists aren't necessarily as good as I think the kind of common discussion is about Trippier, being on corners and all set pieces is such a massive thing to be when you are an FPL asset. Being on corners means that you can always deliver points any sort of game week that they are featuring in. So while his expected assist isn't necessarily too high, I think that isn't necessarily a worry when a player of this caliber is on corners and on deep line free kicks. I think there are assists to come for Trippier. And as I mentioned, bonus point magnet in a good Newcastle defence. If he was to get a clean sheet and an assist, you can guarantee you're getting a 15-point haul there. It is going to be a monster haul. So my view on Trippier is, guys, absolutely a consideration for game week 7. Of course, West Ham away, you could royal free transfer, but then from game week 8 onwards, I think is a fantastic move for your teams. It's someone that I am currently looking at potentially bringing in for game week 7, or if not, game week 8 onwards. So let me know in the comments, guys, what your thoughts are on Trippier and the 2 other players that I did discuss on Toney and Rashford. I'll be very interested to know your thoughts on those going into game week 7. So that's going to wrap up the video, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you did enjoy it, make sure you do drop a like on the video. And if you are new around here, make sure you do hit that subscribe button. We'll be back with our daily content, so hit that notification bell. All the links are in the bio for Fantasy Football Fix information that we've taken. Make sure you do check it out. So without further ado, guys, thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next video. Take care.